excited to dive on into this drought conversation. And so let's go ahead and tackle the big elephant in the room. And that will be, how do you navigate the cattle market amid drought circumstances? And so I think we have to start this conversation with a few things, and we have to ask ourselves, where do we sit in the current cattle cycle? What are the short-term and long-term realities of the market, and what's our goal? And so that's what I'm going to walk you through here today. And so I guess I should probably introduce myself now that I'm already 2 minutes winded into this presentation, but I'm Shaylee Stewart. I'm the livestock market analyst for DTN. I cover the live cattle, feeder cattle, and lean hog markets for DTN and their customers. Getting back to those three questions, again, I just want to plant the seed of, when we are navigating the cattle market through drought situations, we really need to think of these 3 points. Where do we sit in the current cattle cycle? And that's the question that I really want you to spend a lot of time thinking about, because I promise you that whatever drought strategy, whatever drought plan you drum up for this drought, this cycle, it will not be the same strategy, and it'll not be the exact same plan that you use in the next drought. So with that, transitioning to the second question, we need to be very sober upon our valuations of the short-term and long-term realities of the market. That way you can capitalize on any opportunity to gain profits both here and now and then later in the future. And then you also need to be sober-minded about what your goal is in the market. Do you plan on being a ranch that, just simply makes a quick buck and you want to maybe let the cows go because it's a hassle that's bothering you? Or maybe you want to go ahead and have a legacy that you hand down onto your children and grandchildren. We need to be very sober-minded about our own goals in this market.
What I got from the experts so far is this is all about planning. This is all about not making rash decisions. So obviously I want to go straight to the marketing person and tell me how I make my next rash decision. What are we doing with this market? And what's my step today that I can start at least planning for the fall on how I take care of things?
That's a good question. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because that falls in line perfectly with understanding both the short-term and long-term realities of the market. And I think that is something that everybody, regardless of your location, regardless if you're in a drought situation or not, wants to know. And so let's go ahead and break that down into 2 steps. Let's talk about your short-term realities and the long-term realities of the market. Right now, basically what I do on an every single day basis is I make a T-chart of the market. And I say, these are the things that are positively supporting the market, and these are the things that are negatively supporting the market or negatively weighing against the market. And so right now, the biggest headwind that we have is obviously corn prices, drought, inputs of any and all sources, and then also these record on feed numbers. And so obviously, as we, trek through the first couple of days of June, and as we look to July and August, we know that the fall is nearing sooner rather than later. And that obviously, once we get to the fall and once we get worked through these record on feed numbers, that there is prosperity, that there are better prices to be had in the market. But it's just juggling, what do we do from now until then? And so right now, it's just kind of gritting our teeth and getting worked through these record on feed numbers, getting, your pairs through the summer with hopefully calves that are healthy and that are growing, and treating your rangeland appropriately and as stewards should. But then once we get to fall, I am so excited, and I think that we can learn from the droughts in the past, and I think that's so important. But what's important to also understand is that we have culled right year to date 1.57 million head of beef cows, and so that's 14% higher than what we had culled at this point in 2021, and that's 28% higher than the 5-year average. And so that has surpassed the number of beef cows that were culled in 2012 when we had a drought in the southern half of the United States, and that surpasses the number of cows that we had in the 80s. We are going to be looking at having as few as beef cows as we had in the 1950s. And so as you look to the fall, I hope that you are optimistic, and I hope that you are ready to capitalize on the market when given the chance.
What's keeping these culls going so strong? We're talking about record culls going out mixed with drought, and I'm not complaining, but how come we're still doing so good on the cull market?
There's really 2 things that we can factor into really high cull demand right now. And number 1, that's hamburger demand. As box beef prices have been astronomically high over the last 2 years, hamburger is what folks can afford. People want to eat beef because it's an awesome product. It's dense in nutritional value. It's delicious in its taste. But then second of all, the reason why cull cow prices are still as strong, not only because of beef demand, but then also because after branding season and people get those cull cows marketed, how many cull cows are there going to be in the market to market? there aren't going to be many because all the cows that needed to go to town have already gone to town. And so it was funny. I was looking at some sale reports today, and it doesn't matter where you look. And I know that not everywhere got moisture last week, but the shot of moisture that we got, over Memorial Day week and throughout the later part of that week, it really helped the market's overall environment and attitude. And slaughter cow prices in Kansas, I was looking at winter livestock report, they were up $10 to $12 higher. And then get this, slaughter bull prices were up anywhere from $2 to $3 higher. And so I think that as packers are looking at this market, they are realizing that, they have record on feed numbers, but those calf fed fats are working their way into the market, which is obviously affecting grading. And so they're needing to gobble up these cows, because once they're done, once branding season is over, the cows that needed to go to town have already gone through the market, and there aren't going to be very many of them to be had.
I've always assumed that the cull run was in the fall, and I came up with this great solution to start culling during branding season. I thought I was the first one to think of it, but is that more typical than I might have thought? Is there more cows going to town during branding season than there are after pregging?
Well, I've had so many people ask me about this cull cow market and how to market cull cows. Should they put bulls back in with them, and instead of marketing them as open, marketing them as breds? And you are right. The lowest point in the cull cow market is the fall and then the winter. But there are a lot of cows that still go to town in the early spring and summer. But that's just typically when the demand is the highest, because of hamburger demand, because of grilling season, because everybody wants to get out on their deck, get out on their patio, and enjoy the American festivities that we love. But then also because a lot of folks are wanting to get some rebreeds. So they're getting those cows, they're putting embryos in them or what have you, because maybe they can't get their hands on the other type of genetics that they want. And so the rebreed demand, or, taking those cows and giving them to somebody like Transova is really strong. So that's why we see the cycle that way.
Let's talk about changing up your calving dates, and then I'll get to that final question. What do we do about this? Out here, outside of California, we all calve at the same time. We all send these calves to market at the same time. From a marketing standpoint or your grass standpoint, maybe it's time for some of us to consider, calving a little bit later. We hear a lot about it, calving in sync with nature, that kind of stuff. From a marketing standpoint, how do you see that going over?
I think it's a wonderful question, and I think that more people need to consider it. Right now in the U.S., about 75% of the cow herds in the U.S. calve in the spring, or it's more like winter, calving anywhere from January to April. And so when you have 75% of your market supplying feeder cattle then in, September through October, it's market econ 101. Obviously, supply outweighs demand, and prices are softer, they're weaker. You're not going to get the exponential prices that you're hoping for. Now, the only thing that I would caution you is that fall calving isn't an option for everybody. Where we're at, that would take so much feed in order to carry those pairs over from, let's say October into, April. Well, we have some friends, we actually had to do some, drought decision making, and we sent some pairs to Nebraska. They fall calve, and it works beautifully for them, and they're able to capitalize on the market when there's fewer calves or feeders present in the spring and sell then. And it's been absolutely wild for them. They've seen stronger prices. Their calves are healthier, but they are in a region where grass really isn't an issue. They're in a beautiful place in the sand hills, and that just has worked beautifully for them. But given where my husband and I are here in Cody, Wyoming, that wouldn't be an option for us. And so I think if you have the availability to do so, I would say jump for it, because obviously the market's economics of supply and demand would weigh in your favor. But I would caution those who are considering it and saying you really need to put the pen to pencil with that, because your inputs are going to be different than what the current situation is that you're running.
If an operation does not have any hay on hand for the upcoming winter and will not be able to put up any hay this summer, does it make sense to buy $300 hay, or just sell cows and calves in the fall and buy back next spring? Or I'm going to add to that, when the market's ready again, because that's a fantastic question. I don't know where that came from, but thank you.
I'm going to jump in on that one, because I have had this question presented to me so many times, and I understand that there are two sides of the sword here. You know, paying for $300 hay is just absolutely insane. But at the same time, we learn from the spankings that we took in 2012, 2013, and then 2014. And I really want to encourage each and every one of you. There was a study done by Harlan Hughes of North Dakota State University on this exact matter. And he did this study on a 250 cow-calf operation. And basically the rancher was up against the scenario in which we are right now. They had a drought, they put up hay. He historically had kept about 50 replacement heifers and culled some old cows out of his herd each and every year, and he didn't know what to do. And so Harlan ran the numbers. And so basically one point that was highlighted in the study is that the largest negative cash flow impact comes from destocking is actually in the year following the drought. And so earlier I made the point that we need to assess and we need to understand clearly where we sit in this cattle cycle. And so, if we were in a year where cow prices, were sorry and we didn't expect these feeder cattle to do anything, I tell you, you're probably crazy for buying $300 a ton hay. But given where we sit in the cycle of supply and demand and the sheer numbers of cows that have left this market, I'm here to tell you that these feeder cattle prices are going to get astronomically higher. And I'm not going to stick my neck out on the line and say we're going to see 2014 all over again, but I'm here to tell you it's going to be good, it's going to be sweet, and it's going to justify some pretty darn expensive hay.